Welcome. You've found Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott. I'm pastor of the Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California. And we have two guests today. And we're going to be talking about a thing that they went through in their own lives. Over here is Letha Marchetti. Did I say it right, Letha?
You certainly did, Kent.
Oh, good. And this is Tom Martin.
Yes.
And so you're going to have a chance to meet them and hear their stories. So I think it's always, Tom, ladies first,
Sure.
right?
Oh,
Ladies
yeah,
first. So Letha, let's tell us how you got involved in this. What was going on in your life when you were in high school down here? And you went to Drake High, now Archie Williams, but
That's right. Well, it has to go before that.
okay.
So when I was little, just bigger than a toddler, I lived less than a block from a church, a Baptist church on the corner. And I would just go. I don't know how I knew when they had anything going on. And I would come home and get yelled at because I was a grubby little kid, right? And it wasn't appropriate, and I didn't know why I was always in trouble, but I loved it. And I kept going to the church. By the time I was probably 11, I was looking for people who really knew God because I knew I didn't know Him. I read the Bible every day. I'd been reading the Bible for years, but I didn't know anyone who knew God, including my pastor. And as I kept looking, I found two people. So I figured if I hung with them, I would learn. And eventually, someone in that church told the leadership, she was just going on to college, if you don't do something for the youth, you're going to lose a whole generation. And they listened to her. Shocking. And they went and got a youth minister from the Baptist seminary. And they started having youth nights, and he called in these people who had communes. And they came and played music, and they invited us to come to a party on Friday night, to come to a Bible study during the week. And I had invited a friend with me to church that evening. And she thought one of the guys was very interesting, and she wanted to go. I'm like, why would you want to go to that? So we went, and there were probably 25 people sitting around on the floor and in a few chairs. And as I sat there, I felt something different. It was not a physical feeling, it was a spiritual awareness. And I recognized these people knew God. They really knew Him, really. Mm-hmm. And I wanted Him. Mm-hmm. That's what happened.
Okay. And you were about how old at that point?
12.
About 12 years old. Mm. Wow. Okay. Oh, 12. All right. Very good. And now, Tom, how about you?
Well, so I was one of those seekers, during that period of time. I was seeking truth, and what is right, who is God, what is the divine, what is the meaning of life, that whole thing, which a lot of the people in my generation were looking for. And, looking in all the wrong places, looking in Buddhism and Hinduism and, New Age religions and, the mysticism and all that stuff. And so I knew there was a God out there. I knew there was a divine out there. I just didn't know what that was. And so I remember seeing the Jesus people, like I'd go to a football game, they'd come by and pass out the broadsides of the tracks. And I remember thinking, well, they're good people and everything, but a little narrow-minded. They haven't expanded their mind like I have. And I had taken LSD and drugs and stuff like that, and just the things that everybody else in that generation was doing. Anyways, a friend who used to tell me about Jesus in the street, Mark Adams, would come by, and I would argue with Mark, and we would have these heated debates, and I would tell Mark, you're narrow-minded, Mark. Jesus is not the only way. Mark invited me to go to church, and when I started going to church, there was something, as Letha was sharing, there was something supernatural happening. I knew that there was something here that defied explanation, and kind of miraculous things, coincidences started happening in my life. Whoever was teaching on that Sunday morning would be speaking directly to me in a personal way, and like reading my mail, and I just knew they couldn't know all that stuff about me. So it was really the Holy Spirit or the divine that was communicating to me. And I just came to realize that there was something going on here, and it was Jesus.
So, so you, at some point, how old were you at that point, Tom?
I had just turned 21.
Just turned 21,
Yep.
and you're, what, 10 years younger. What followed? Did you get baptized?
I was already baptized in the church I was with.
Okay.
I got baptized in Bob Ellison's swimming pool after I recommitted my life to Christ because I hadn't really made that kind of solid commitment as an adult.
Did you know who Bob Ellison was?
The name.
The
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Now, and who baptized you, Tom?
It would have been Kenny Sanders, I believe.
And I talked to Kenny Sanders on the phone today.
Yep.
And he remembered.
Yep.
He remembered you and the baptism at Bob Ellison's pool in
did he?
Tiburon.
Okay. Well, Kenny and I are still friends. We keep in touch.
Yeah. What a great guy.
Yeah.
He was one of our pastors.
Yep.
And he became a doctor. He was an
Yes.
MD
Yep.
with Kaiser, and he's retired now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But one of the great guys.
Yep.
His father was one of the companions of Martin Luther King Jr. Was one of his lawyers.
Yep.
So that was quite a background. So that's how you became Christians. Letha, just take us through maybe your high school time and your college time. What happened there? You got married, obviously, and bring us up on that.
Well, I started going to everything that was happening at those houses, whether it was a Tuesday study, a Thursday study. Different little church groups broke off from them. I kept going to my church Sunday morning, and they'd often have a Grace Church had something Sunday afternoon at the San Francisco Theological Seminary. I guess they rented a building or something. Anyway, there was a lot, and I just dug into the Word. I hung with Christians, and my life changed. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I was actually a very, smiley child, but I was born again. I was new from the inside out. I found that there was purpose and meaning to life. Everything changed for me.
Yeah.
And it was great. I got married at 18 and went on to college in San Jose. I'm an occupational therapist. And through all of this, I've been teaching Bible studies from junior high school. Until this day, I still teach Bible studies. And a lot because of what I learned in those houses. The methods that you used and that happened at Baraka House. That's what I do. I dig in. What does the Greek mean? What does the Hebrew mean? We go verse by verse, or if it's too big of a...
I still do it.
It's just wonderful. It's deep. It's honest. And I want people to bring their question and their honest... I mean, if they analyze it and I think it's this and they think it's that, I want to hear what they say. I think it's so important that we give people the liberty to express their view, to disagree, and to still be loved.
Now, the Baraka House you're thinking of when it was in San Anselmo.
Yeah.
Before it moved to a little farm in Petaluma, where Paul Bryant was the head of the house. I actually have some old photographs. So you got married, occupational therapist. Wow, I don't even know what that is.
Well, the short version, it's the therapy of being occupied. Okay. So doing something that's therapeutic. It could be exercise, it could be cooking, it could be anything. So right now I'm treating a young man who had a head injury, and he's doing great. He's driving now, and soon we'll be moving back to Montana. I have several young children I see who have all these learning disability kind of issues that are so prevalent these days. I have one young gal who's been clean and sober for 2 years now under my care, and people who are suicidal, people who've had things that you might consider psychiatric. I do trauma recovery. It's wonderful. I'm suited for it.
And you're perfect for it.
Oh, thank you, Kent.
Come on, Tom. She's perfect for it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You'd have to see. It's just amazing. You know, some of my work, I have my hands on my patients and I ask them, is it all right with you if I pray for you? And outside of one, they're like, please do.
Yeah. Wow.
And my results are far, far better than the average.
Yeah.
When I was working at a local rehab hospital, and I told them I was leaving to do my private practice, and they said, but you're our best therapist, inpatient, outpatient, any kind of therapy. And she said, not by a little, but by a lot. I'm like, well, I know, because God's at work through me.
Well, we could. I'd like to bring a few patients to you. Tom, how about you, buddy?
So yeah, for me, shortly after I started going to church, I moved into the communal house, which was called the Mighty Fortress, we had about 8 people living there, and I was before I started going to the Mighty Fortress, before I accepted Christ, I was on a fast track to nowhere. I would have to say I was depressed, I was confused, sort of angry, bitter, the whole thing that you get caught up in if you're, taking drugs or doing things like that. And I kind of came to the conclusion that life would never be good, life was just always going to be bland, life was always going to be hard, And when somebody said, well, I said, well, there's something here that I can't explain. There's something going on. There's something supernatural. And somebody said, well, you need to give your life 100% to Jesus. And I said, well, I'm not even sure if that's true or not, but I'll try that as an experiment. I said, okay, God, Jesus, if you're real, I'm going to give my life 100% to you. I'm going to devote to you exclusively and see what happens. And I did that. There was a peace and a joy and a contentment that came upon me. It was like a tangible presence that I didn't even think was possible. I knew as a kid, I was a very happy-go-lucky kid, and that I had forgotten what that was like. And so the presence of the Lord came upon me in a very powerful way, and I knew it was God, and so I haven't looked back since. And since then, I went on and married one of the women that was going to the church, Kathy Warnock Martin. Yep.
Do you remember Kathy Warnock?
I don't. I feel cheated.
Oh, I knew Kathy.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew Kathy. She lived at the Christian house.
New Jerusalem. Huh? New Jerusalem house.
Betty Kenner ran.
Yes, yep.
Yes,
yep.
Betty.
Yep.
Yeah, who was the chief, ran our bookstore.
Yep.
So I knew Kathy well.
And just real quick aside, Kathy said, well, yeah, Kent was kind of like a father. I was always getting scolded by Kent for something I was doing wrong.
Oh my goodness.
She loves you though. So anyways, I went on and married Kathy. Went on, got a degree in electrical engineering. Went to work for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Then went to work for the Tacoma Power after that, up in the Pacific Northwest. And yeah, we had 6 kids, and just life is good. I'm retired now.
You're retired?
Yeah, I'm retired, and just enjoying being retired. Just wanting to be available as to however God would have me to, be deployed the last years of my life. So.
Do you ever know the name Greg Beamer?
I've heard the name before, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He lives up close to you.
Okay, yeah.
He's been down here. He was a part of Joyful Noise.
Mm-hmm.
Part of Joyful Noise in our band.
Yeah.
He's still doing his Christian music. Do you remember Greg Beamer?
No, but I'm wondering if you still have the guitar we gave you. Had like a hummingbird or something on it?
Oh, Letha, you wouldn't believe this. I can't believe this. Yes, I play it every Sunday. It's called the Conqueror. It's a Japanese imitation of the Gibson hummingbird, and I've worn the hummingbird off. But I still have that guitar. I play it every Sunday morning.
Oh, that's great.
You guys, the Bible study, you gave it to me over at the Methodist Church, John Wesley Hall in San Rafael at the Methodist Church. We had a Tuesday night Bible study.
That's right.
Yeah, and they gave me, and it was a couple $100 a guitar. It was top guitar. I'm still playing it.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Such a story, Lisa. I will never forget that. My goodness.
That's great.
Actually, Greg Beamer, I believe, is in this book.
He is.
Yeah, so I read this book, and I really enjoyed it because, it profiles a lot of people that we used to go to church with back in the 70s. I think the story of the guitar is in here too, if I remember correctly. The story of your hummingbird guitar,
Yeah.
I think it's in here.
Letha, I'm going to sign that book to you.
So I want to see if these are people I recognize.
And you see that's the picture there. It's taken up for the TV crowd.
Shameless
that
plug
picture,
here.
it was at San Quentin Prison.
Okay.
In 1971, our band was there, and that's me playing that guitar. That's
No
the hummingbird
kidding.
right there.
Wow.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We did not know that this was a big move of the Holy Spirit, did we? We didn't know that.
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know what to know.
Yeah. How
I
about
thought
you?
it was a big move.
Did you?
Yeah, and to this day, like seeing that Jesus, what did they call it?
Revolution.
The Jesus
Jesus
Revolution
Yeah.
film. And they made it sound like it was just this little thing on the West Coast. It was all over, and I knew that.
Yeah.
And we still have it today. This is worldwide what's happening. It's so exciting.
I think Larry Eskridge and a lot of the people, they date the movement of the Jesus movement from 1967 to 1972, which is typical. The largest one was the Second Great Awakening, 1799 to about 1830. The biggest awakening in America was 1756, 1758. 2.5 years, it spread from coast to coast. It was huge. The shortest and the hugest. They begin and they end. They begin and they end.
Yeah.
So it's referred to as an awakening. Now, did you ever experience any miracles, any big deals that went on? Did you ever see anything like that?
Well, I think being baptized in the Holy Spirit was a miracle, as far as I was
Sure.
concerned. Yeah, and speaking in tongues. We prayed for people frequently who were healed. And for myself, just continuing through the years, I think it's 12 years now since I was diagnosed with cancer. And I lay on the mat in my clinic and I said, God, I don't know what I did to give myself cancer. So I don't know how to get rid of it. But if you have any use for me, it's on you, because I'm not doing chemo, radiation, or surgery, because I watched my dad die with cancer, butchered to death. So he began to tell me, do this, do this, do this. And I did it, and it was 3 or 4 months later, I was free and clear and no cancer since.
Wow.
So that's
Praise
a pretty
God for
big
that.
miracle.
Yeah.
Praise God for that, Letha. That's wonderful. Now, I'm usually, for those who are watching, I'm saying more than I usually, but back in the Bible study at Wesley Hall, remember we used to pray for people to get healed afterwards?
Yes.
One person who I'd never seen before came up and wanted for prayer. And so laid hands on her, prayed for her to be healed. 2 days later, I got a call from her father, who was a city official here in San Rafael, mad at me because she was, the next morning, Wednesday morning, she was under the table for medicated. It was a big eye operation. And they looked at there, and her eye was perfectly normal. It was completely healed. And he called me up and got mad at me for that. And she went on, she was Jewish, she went on to be involved with Jews for Jesus. And Jews for Jesus. But yeah, there were, at that period of time, people got miraculously healed. And I remember in the years following, we would do the same thing, but we didn't see all those healings. I mean, we saw some miraculous healings. I mean, incredible thing. But it's typical of awakenings, an outpouring of the Spirit. We like to say there's awakening times and normal times. We're living in what most people say is normal times. But just here, but in various places in America, there's awakenings going on in different places.
Yeah.
So how about you, Don? Experienced anything like that?
You know, I would have to say that the miracles that I've experienced have been more transformational miracles. It's been the evidence of God working supernaturally in my life that defies coincidence. And so I've seen Him working in my life, opening doors, closing doors. I've seen Him working in other people's lives. I'm training with a man right now to do the Seattle to Portland bike ride. And he was a drug addict on the streets, in prison for armed robbery. Now he's radically following Jesus and has just totally flipped his life around. I've seen that happen so many times. To me, that's the miracle.
That's a miracle.
Yep. And so I know people personally who have visually seen angels and that kind of miracles and stuff. I never have, but to me the biggest miracles is just seeing lives transformed. Yeah.
Well said, Tom. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I do agree. Now, Letha, is there anything floating around in your mind you want to say right now in this whole area?
I think a lot of it is the deliverance piece. I remember in our various Bible studies, people would come in, people who had drug issues, people who had all kinds of just difficult stuff going on in their lives. And God switched them up. I mean, you talk about Kenny Sanders. I remember when he came into Baraka House, and it was like, look at this guy. He was out there.
Oh, Kenny was out there.
Yeah.
A black guy in a white area, long, scraggly hair, skinny as a bone from all the drugs.
And the changes, beautiful. It wasn't until I logged on to your website after I reconnected with you the other day, and you have a chart in there about the different houses and what grew out of what ministry. And I saw that he had started another ministry, and I'm like, I never knew that Ken did that. That's wonderful.
He took over Baraka House. Bob Ellison bought us a big farm.
Yep.
Up in Petaluma.
Yep. Thyatira,
and Kenny was the head of it. Kenny and Cliff Silliman. Remember Cliff Silliman?
I'm still friends with Cliff, yeah.
Are you friends with Cliff?
Yep.
I think we interviewed him.
Okay.
I think so. And but yeah, this was an outpouring of the Holy Spirit that and we didn't really know. There was a little problem though that created for us that I got impacted by, is we thought we were more spiritual than everybody else. Because we were seeing the anointings, we were seeing the miracles, and it wasn't happening. It was all these street ridiculous people, which are for good people like Letha.
Well, it's true. There was a big rift between many of the established congregations and the Jesus people. And I never did understand it, because aren't we all the same family?
Yeah.
But in the church that I stayed in, it was very difficult. The criticism I received and all of that, it took me years and years to finally leave that fellowship.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't get it. Yeah. It was so sad.
Yeah. Yeah, there was, in during the Jesus movement, we were part of a thing called Evangelical Concerns. We met at the First Baptist Church of San Francisco. Don McDonald, John Streeter, who was a friend of Billy Graham's, by the way, was pastor there, and I was a part of it. Moish Rosen of Jews for Jesus, I brought Moish down there, and Dr. Francis DeVos, professor of evangelism at Golden Gate. There were a number of people who did pay attention, and frankly, they were mostly American Baptist churches. Mostly American Baptist church. That church that you went to was American Baptist Church.
Yeah.
I knew the pastor there. And the church that I pastor right now is American Baptist Church. It's the same church that John McDonald went to and Moish Rosen went to. And John Streeter was the pastor just before me of the little church. Wow.
Have you followed what's going on with Jews for Jesus? Is Ruth active? And
yeah, it's still going. Katie has worked with Jews for Jesus. She financially supports it too. We're friends with Jews for Jesus. They're still doing. They've grown quite a bit.
Yeah, that was a wonderful ministry. Moish was just great to be with.
My oldest daughter was his first secretary of Jews for Jesus. Is my oldest daughter. So we're talking about what happened in your life following the Jesus People movement, and so Tom, tell us a little bit more about those early days.
Well, let me see. So I lived at it was a Christian commune house, the Mighty Fortress. It was very interesting because what we were doing is we were taking in people off the street and giving them a chance to either follow Jesus or not, And it was it was almost like throwing out a net. You'd pull it in, and some people, and then there would be some keepers and some people you'd throw away. But I would say of the people that were the transients, people that were going hitchhiking up and down the 101 freeway, and they would stop at our house and they maybe stay a week or two. Some of them became radical followers of Jesus Christ and just really transformed their life and turned it around. Others just wouldn't want to have much to do with it, and they just went away.
Well, I'll tell you,
those were exciting times.
I tell you the story. Cliff Silliman called me.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing the Baraka House, the little 6-acre farm.
Yeah.
And what had happened is somebody had put together a newspaper about all the Jesus people houses from New York to Los Angeles, San Francisco. And a guy on a motorcycle showed up at Baraka House. And stayed there a few days. And Cliff, somehow he heard the gospel there at Baraka House, became a follower of Jesus. He rode away on his motorcycle, but he left a $3,000 check with Cliff. Cliff Silliman called me. This is 1969. Cliff called me, and we took that $3,000, and that's the money we used to start our first Christian bookstore in San Rafael, the Miracle Mile.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how that guy, he heard about that they had some kind of newspaper, and all across the country, all these Jesus people houses that you could come and stay at for free.
Wow.
And get fed. And this guy showed up. I mean, see, now to me that's Miracle City here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Miracle City.
Yep.
That this guy gave us a $3,000 check, and that was a lot of money back then.
Sure. It was an orchestration of God to provide for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that first Christian bookstore, that's Betty Kenner ran it, Betty.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's where I had my office, my counseling center for 10 years.
Yep.
Marin Christian Counseling Center.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do that, and out of that was born Love in Action, the ex-gay ministry. Hundreds of people came to us, and I counseled them, hundreds of the gay people for all those years. Well, you guys, we got another program we're going to do. We're winding down here on this one, Letha.
Okay.
But I'm so glad you guys are here and doing this. So we got a few more things to say. So you can go to milleravenuechurch.org. I know you're going to be seeing that on your screen right now. And you can see more of these programs, a lot more programs, by the hundreds of our various programs. You can see those. Also, we have a ministry for those whose relationships have lost. And you can go to Meetup and join with us and on that ministry too. So long.